Welcome to this deep dive. And today we're going to be talking about something I think a lot of you guys out there struggle with.
Yeah.
And that is you can understand English, but speaking it is a whole other story.
Right.
So we've got someone here who can help us with this
Yeah.
and kind of give us some insight into this.
Basically, what I find interesting is that there's a neurological reason for this. It's not
Yeah.
just
Okay.
it's not just that, people are too shy or, they're not confident enough. It's actually
So there's like a scientific reason why I feel like I'm two different people
yeah.
when I encounter English.
Yeah.
Like I can read a novel, I can read, a complicated news article,
Right.
but then ask me to order a coffee and I'm like,
Yeah, and that's because the way that your brain processes language when you're, reading or listening,
Mhm.
it's called receptive language, and it's like you're in observation mode.
okay,
Like when you're learning to drive
right, yeah,
and you're just observing someone else drive, but then when you actually have to speak, you have to get behind the wheel yourself.
right,
And that's called productive language.
okay,
And it's a lot more demanding because you have to, recall all this vocabulary.
Mhm.
You have to piece together grammatically correct sentences.
yeah,
You have to coordinate all the muscles involved in speaking.
yeah.
So
My brain's happy to be a passenger,
yeah.
but as soon as you ask it to drive, it's like,
Oh, right. And this is where this whole perfection myth comes into play because
Okay.
so many English learners, they get stuck because they think they need to speak perfectly from the get-go.
oh, I've been there.
Right.
I've totally been there.
Right.
Like you compare yourself to a native speaker and you're just like, well, why even bother?
Yeah. And it's so important to remember that even native speakers
Yeah.
make mistakes.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah, they mispronounce words, they
Mhm.
stumble over sentences. It's totally natural. So it's really about shifting your perspective from, viewing mistakes as failures to viewing them as learning opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we make that shift then? How do
Yeah.
we go from, understanding?
One of the most effective strategies is to just start small.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't feel pressured to jump into these really complex conversations right away.
Okay.
Just, start by practicing simple phrases and sentences in everyday situations.
I like that.
Yeah.
Like instead of trying to, get into a debate about philosophy, I can just order my coffee
Exactly.
or ask for directions.
Yeah.
Something simple.
Yeah, even something as simple as narrating your daily activities in English
Oh, okay.
can be really helpful.
So instead of just, making my coffee on autopilot in the morning,
All right.
I'm like, okay, first I need to grind the beans.
Yeah,
Oh, and I almost spilled the water.
exactly.
Ah, okay.
And that comfort that you build by doing that is really crucial because it lays the foundation for building fluency.
Gotcha.
And when it comes to building fluency, consistency is just as important as what you choose to do.
Okay. So
Like-
working out a muscle, right?
Exactly.
Like the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah.
But instead of lifting weights, we're lifting words.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So, aim to practice speaking for even just a few minutes each day. It's about building that habit. And, speaking of habits, I'm curious, have you found any particularly creative ways to kind of integrate English into your daily routine?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've turned my entire kitchen into a little English language lab.
Oh, wow.
So I talk to myself while I'm cooking. I narrate my grocery shopping list.
Uh-huh.
I even have pretend conversations with the cashier in my head.
I love that.
So it's
And it brings up a really good point that you don't always need a conversation partner
right.
to practice speaking.
Yeah.
Especially with all the technology that we have available to us these days.
Oh, totally. I love using my speech recognition app
Oh, yeah.
to work on my pronunciation.
Yeah.
It's so cool because it gives you instant feedback
Yeah.
on how you're saying things.
That's a great example. And there are also language exchange apps
Oh, yeah.
where you can connect with native English speakers around the world and you can have, text-based conversations, voice calls, even video chats.
Oh.
It's like having a virtual language partner right in your pocket.
Yeah. And, AI is really cool too.
Oh, yeah.
I've been using some chatbots just to practice typing out conversations in English.
Absolutely.
So it's not the same as speaking, obviously.
Yeah.
But it helps me think about vocabulary
Yeah.
and sentence structure.
Those are all important building blocks for
Yeah.
fluency. And speaking of building blocks, there's another technique I want to introduce, and it's called shadowing.
Shadowing. What is that?
So it's a pretty simple but surprisingly effective technique. Essentially, you listen to a recording of a native speaker and try to repeat what they're saying as closely as you can mimic their pronunciation, their intonation, even their rhythm.
Okay.
It's almost like a vocal workout.
So it's like karaoke, but instead of singing,
I'm
it's
speaking.
talking.
That's a great way to put it. And you can use any audio or video material you enjoy, podcasts, YouTube videos, movies, even audiobooks.
Oh, cool.
Just pick something that holds your interest and start mimicking.
Okay.
It's a really fun and immersive way to absorb natural language patterns.
And just like karaoke, I don't have to be perfect at it.
Exactly.
It's more about the practice.
Right.
Yeah.
And while technology can be a fantastic tool, for practicing on your own,
Right.
there's also something to be said for connecting with other English learners.
Yeah, like joining a community.
Right, like an English conversation group or an online forum.
I've always been kind of hesitant to do that.
I understand.
Like, I get nervous just thinking about speaking in front of other people.
I get that. But, I want to challenge that hesitation a little bit
Okay.
because joining a community can be incredibly beneficial.
Okay.
It provides, like a safe and supportive space to practice your speaking skills
Okay.
and get feedback from others who are on the same journey as you.
I guess it is different than just like practicing in the mirror or talking to an app.
Yeah, it brings a whole different level of realness to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And realness is what it's all about because ultimately, the goal of learning a language is to use it to connect with others.
That's true.
Yeah, so.
What if you're like intimidated by the idea of like joining a group though?
Um, I would say, start by looking for online communities first.
Okay.
They can feel less intimidating than in-person groups. There are tons of forums and social media groups specifically for English language learners.
Right.
It's a great way to kind of dip your toes in the water.
Yeah.
And connect with others from the comfort of your own home. And who knows, you might even make some new friends along the way.
That's true.
It's all about finding what works best for you.
Yeah.
Some people thrive in group settings, others prefer one-on-one interactions, and that's perfectly okay.
Right.
The key is to experiment, try different approaches, and see what feels most comfortable and effective for you.
It sounds like we've covered a lot today.
Yeah.
Going from like the brain science behind language learning to all these practical tips. It's encouraging to hear that there's so many different ways to approach this.
Yeah, and that's what I hope listeners take away from this deep dive.
Yeah.
That, there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but by understanding how your brain works and experimenting with different techniques,
Right.
you can find what helps you kind of unlock your English speaking potential.
So if we were to sum all this up into like one key takeaway, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway is don't wait until you feel ready
Okay.
to start speaking. Right. The key to unlocking your English speaking abilities is to just start speaking now.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a little bit each day.
It's so easy to get caught up in like thinking that you need to be perfect before you can even open your mouth.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's not true at all.
Every word you say, every mistake you make is a step forward.
Okay.
So embrace those stumbles, learn from them, and keep practicing. You'll be amazed at how quickly you progress.
So it really is about like building that habit.
Yes.
Those little workouts for your English.
Exactly. It's like
Uh-huh.
going to the gym for your tongue.
I like that.
Yeah.
So for our listeners out there who are like ready to take action,
Yeah.
what's like one thing they can do today?
I would challenge them to pick just one of the tips that we've discussed today
Okay.
and commit to trying it out for at least a week.
Okay.
Maybe it's narrating their daily routine in English.
Oh.
Maybe it's trying out a language exchange app.
Oh.
Maybe it's shadowing a few minutes of their favorite podcast.
I love that. Small steps, consistency.
Exactly.
Celebrating those little victories along the way.
Yes.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much, not only about like, how we learn language, but also about like the mindset
Absolutely.
like we need to have.
Yeah, the mental aspect of it is so important.
Yeah.
Believing in yourself, having self-compassion.
Totally.
It makes a huge difference.
Well, it's been great having you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, remember, we're cheering you on every step of the way.
You got this.
You've got this. Until next time, happy speaking.